Have you ever been in a season in your life where you felt like you were in conflict every day? I've been in that situation before. I'm sure most of us have. That's exhausting, right? That's what these people in 1 Peter 2 in the early church, they were dealing with this every day and they were tired. 1 Peter 2:16. Live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Are you living a life where you're free? Do you feel free today? Just think about that. Do you feel free? Or do you feel shackled? So to whom was Peter writing this text? Let's answer that. There are three specific groups of people to whom Peter was writing. One was the Roman Empire residents. The Roman Empire residents. Now keep in mind, Rome was a totalitarian state. These people were not exactly swimming in freedom, were they? No. Totalitarian state. They didn't have the kinds of freedoms that we enjoy today. Second group of people to whom Peter was writing, those who experience injustice at work. That's a very specific group of people. But if you've ever gone to work and you felt like, man, I am not being treated justly, then you might want to read 1 Peter 2:18 with me right now. Servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust. Now, verse 18 is teaching us that some of these people were slaves. And let's make this super clear. The Bible does not teach that slavery is okay, okay? Slavery is a sin to enslave someone. I think it's just important that we say that. What the Bible does do is give us wise and practical counsel to believers who are living in situations of injustice. And especially people who are living under somebody who is not being just and they feel like they have no way of escape. I'm going to ask you rhetorically, have you ever felt like you were treated unjustly and there was no way of escaping that situation? If you've been in that situation, then you can relate to 1 Peter 2:18 and the slaves that were being referenced there. The Bible speaks to the world as it is, not as we would like for it to be. The Bible is not some message for a utopian society. The Bible is a message to a fallen world, which includes a word for the oppressed. This includes people who suffer injustice. Therefore, God speaks to those whose world is not as any of us would want it to be. That's the world in which we live. But Peter was writing to the Roman Empire residents. He was writing to people who were treated with a lack of justice, specifically at work. And then thirdly and lastly, the people to whom Peter was writing were people who experienced difficulties at home. People who experienced difficulties at home. Now, I know nobody in here has any difficulties at home, right? Everybody, all y'all have perfect families. No. Every family has issues. And sometimes in your family, you feel like you are not treated justly. Peter is writing to some people with great difficulties at home. Look at verses 1 and 2 of 1 Peter 3. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and your pure conduct. So here's the situation that was taking place in the early church, and 1 Peter 3, 1 and 2 is clarifying this for us, that evidently there were some people who were coming to faith in Jesus Christ that were women, and their husbands were not coming to faith in Jesus Christ. And so it was creating some conflict in the family. Now, I happen to know many women over the course of my ministry who have known Jesus, but their husband either didn't know Jesus or he was extremely distant from Jesus. And that does indeed create conflict in the home. 1 Peter 3, 1 through 2 is teaching about that. If you are in that particular situation, I encourage you to read 1 Peter 3, over and over. I'm going to be preaching 1 Peter 3 1 week from today. But this difficult situation, Peter was writing about how you can have freedom. What kind of freedom do you have if you have no support from the state like the people who lived in Rome? By the way, anybody here sometimes feel like our government is not really helping us out a whole lot, but sometimes it's making it more difficult to live? Sure, sometimes we feel that way. What kind of freedom do you have if you feel like there is injustice and suffering in your workplace? What kind of freedom do you have if your family dynamic is really messed up? But Christ is saying at the end of 1 Peter 2, you can have freedom. He's saying that. I want to suggest a simple definition of freedom, as this message is entitled New Freedom. But freedom, the definition that I have for you, it's very simple. It's one sentence. Freedom means you have the ability to make a different choice. Freedom means you have the ability to make a different choice. Think about this. When Henry Ford had all of those cars coming off of the line there in Michigan, and all the cars were black, was there freedom in your choice of car? No. Freedom means you can make a different choice. Peter says you have freedom and you should use it. Think with me for a moment about these first readers, these Romans, these people who were in unjust work situations, these people who were struggling in their families. Think about them. I'd expect a lot of them were living in constant conflict. Just constant. Have you ever been in a season in your life where you felt like you were in conflict every day? I've been in that situation before. I'm sure most of us have. That's exhausting, right? That's what these people in 1 Peter 2 in the early church, they were dealing with this every day and they were tired. So he's writing to people who are also facing their lack of joy at work, and that can lead to you actually hating your employer. So you got to keep that in mind. And thirdly, he's really dealing with people who are struggling with difficulties at home. In our culture, many of us would be told by our friends and the culture at large, well, if you're having a lot of difficulties at home, just leave your family. And forget about all of the commitments that you made and the vow that you made before God. When Peter says to live as those who are free, he's saying to those in great difficulty that you need to exercise the ability you have to make a different choice from the one that everyone else makes that is natural to the flesh in this kind of situation. Jesus said this in John 8:36. John 8:36. If the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. I want you to think about freedom as if you're thinking about a river with a current that's flowing, and you're swimming with the current. You're not free unless you're able to swim against the current. All right? You're able to make a different choice than what everybody's making. Freedom only exists when we have the power to rise above the natural inclination of the flesh to act in a way that is different for the glory of God. Now, Jesus says that's what I give you when you come to me. That is freeing, isn't it? Isn't it just freeing to have a relationship with Jesus?